In the vast history of YouTube, few partnerships have left a mark as deep and enduring as Dan Howell and Phil Lester. Their friendship, humor, and creative chemistry didn't just entertain millions, they helped shape the culture of an entire generation online. And in 2025, after years of endless fan theories, subtle hints, and heartwarming moments, the question that had echoed for more than a decade, "Are Dan and Phil in a relationship?" was finally answered. But to understand that moment, you have to go back to where it all began. Long before the world even knew their names. Dan Howell was born in 1991 in Wokingham, England, a curious, witty, and slightly awkward teenager who found comfort in video games, music, and the growing universe of the internet. Meanwhile, Phil Lester, born in 1987 in Manchester, was already making videos before YouTube had even become a household name. With his calm voice, kind humor, and love for storytelling, Phil was the perfect embodiment of early internet creativity. In 2009, fate connected them. Dan stumbled upon Phil's channel, instantly drawn to his unique style. What began as a few friendly messages turned into a genuine friendship. Soon, they met in person, and their first collaboration was born. The energy between them was undeniable. That single video set off a creative partnership that would go on to define an entire era of YouTube. Between 2010 and 2014, Dan and Phil became the internet's favorite duo. Dan, sarcastic, dramatic, and self-aware, balanced perfectly with Phil, warm, optimistic, and endlessly imaginative. Their dynamic was lightning in a bottle. Together, they launched Dan and Phil Games, a channel where even the simplest playthroughs turned into hilarious, heartfelt adventures. Their chemistry was so natural that fans couldn't help but feel like they were watching two halves of one creative soul. And outside gaming, their main channels, Amazing Phil and Dan Is Not on Fire, continued to grow. They built a world where awkwardness, laughter, and vulnerability were celebrated. By 2013, they had millions of subscribers, sold-out live shows, and a fandom that felt more like a family. When they moved in together in London, it only fueled the magic. Their colorful apartment, complete with quirky decor and the famous Phil's Corner, became iconic. Fans couldn't get enough. And naturally, questions started swirling. Were they just best friends? Or something more? Across Tumblr threads and fan forums, people analyzed every glance, every smile, every inside joke. But Dan and Phil never fed the speculation. They drew clear lines, choosing to keep their private lives private, while pouring all their energy into creating safe, joyful spaces online. Their friendship was built on mutual respect and creativity, not gossip. By 2015, they were unstoppable. They became BBC Radio 1 hosts, bringing their playful energy to a wider audience, interviewing artists, playing games, and making every listener feel part of their world. That same year, they published their first book, The Amazing Book Is Not on Fire, a colorful blend of humor, nostalgia, and self-discovery. It became an instant bestseller. Their success led to a world tour. The Amazing Tour Is Not on Fire. From the UK to the US and beyond, thousands of fans packed theaters, waving glow sticks and laughing through tears. It wasn't just a show, it was a celebration of connection. But fame comes with shadows. As their audience grew, so did curiosity about their relationship. Fans shipped them endlessly, affectionately calling them Fan. While much of it was playful, some crossed the line, digging too deep or demanding answers. Through it all, Dan and Phil stayed grounded. They refused to let speculation dictate their story. Phil once said, "We share a lot of our lives online, but not everything has to be public. Some things are just for us." That philosophy became their anchor. Then, in 2019, Dan uploaded one of the most emotional videos in YouTube history. Basically, I'm gay. In it, he opened up about identity, mental health, and the challenges of growing up feeling different. He spoke from the heart. And when he mentioned Phil, his voice softened. He called him a truly amazing person who has been there for me through everything. Phil later released his own coming out video, gently affirming what fans had long suspected, that both of them were part of the LGBTQ+ community. They didn't confirm their romantic status, but they didn't need to. The love and trust between them spoke louder than any label could. For millions of fans, their story became a beacon of representation, proof that love, friendship, and respect could coexist beautifully. They built a world where people could be authentic, where creators didn't need to exploit their private lives for views, and where kindness was louder than clout. And in 2025, when they finally acknowledged that, yes, they had been partners all along, the internet didn't explode with shock. It exhaled, because deep down everyone already knew. Their journey wasn't just about YouTube's success. It was about growing up in front of the world, protecting what mattered, and showing that love, quiet, genuine, and patient, can thrive even under the brightest spotlight. Dan and Phil didn't just change online entertainment. They reminded the world that vulnerability isn't weakness, privacy isn't secrecy, and that sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones that were never a performance. They were simply real. After their 2025 reveal, the internet didn't just celebrate, it paused, almost in collective awe. The moment felt like a full-circle ending to one of YouTube's longest, most beloved mysteries. Dan and Phil, after more than 15 years of videos, tours, and laughter, had quietly confirmed what fans had always believed, that their connection was built on something deeper than friendship, something real, lasting, and full of trust. But what made their revelation so powerful wasn't the shock value, it was the tenderness. They didn't announce it through a viral thumbnail or a dramatic title. There was no clickbait or fanfare. Instead, it came in the form of a simple conversation, a live stream filled with warmth, vulnerability, and humor that only they could pull off. Sitting side by side on a familiar couch, surrounded by fairy lights and nostalgia, Dan smiled and said, "I guess after all this time, we don't need to keep saying we're just friends anymore." Phil laughed, a little nervous, a little emotional, and replied, "We've shared our lives for over a decade. I think people figured it out." The chat exploded. Millions of fans flooded the comments, crying, laughing, and thanking them for letting the world in. Not because they owed anyone an explanation, but because their honesty felt like a gift. For longtime followers, the moment was overwhelming. The same people who had grown up watching Dan Is Not on Fire and Amazing Phil felt like they were watching two chapters merge into one story, one built on loyalty, patience, and quiet love. It wasn't the kind of love that screamed for attention. It was the kind that endured through storms and screens alike. After the stream, tributes poured in from across the internet. Edits, fan art, and threads flooded Twitter, TikTok, and Tumblr. Hashtags like DunkFanForever and Dan and Phil Confirmed trended for days. Even other creators, some of whom had started YouTube because of Dan and Phil, shared heartfelt posts calling them pioneers of authenticity. But beyond the noise of celebration, something deeper happened. Their story started sparking conversations about how queer relationships are portrayed online. For years, Dan and Phil had resisted pressure to label or perform their connection, choosing instead to exist on their own terms. That decision, once seen as secretive, now looked like courage. Their message was clear: love doesn't need to be shouted to be real. In the weeks that followed, they leaned into life as they always had, with humor and heart. They posted new videos together, teasing each other over games, inside jokes, and cooking disasters. But this time, something felt different. There was a sense of ease, of freedom, as if they no longer had to edit out the truth in between their laughter. Dan mentioned in one interview that finally sharing their truth felt like removing the last mask. He talked about how growing up online had made him feel like every moment had to be curated or justified. But with Phil, he'd found the rare peace of just being. Phil, as always, summed it up more simply: "We've always been happiest when we're just being ourselves." Their fans understood, because from the very beginning, that's what made Dan and Phil special. Not perfection, not the viral moments, but the humanity underneath it all. They showed that it's okay to grow, to change, and to protect your heart until you're ready to share it. Now, years into their journey, they're still doing what they've always done best: making people laugh, comforting those who feel out of place, and reminding their audience that love, in any form, deserves patience and privacy. Looking back, their story isn't just about two YouTubers who fell in love. It's about two people who built an empire out of friendship, survived the internet's obsession, and came out the other side stronger than ever. Proof that real connection can survive fame, time, and everything in between. As one fan wrote beneath their latest video, "They didn't just grow up with us, and they helped us grow, too." And maybe that's the legacy Dan and Phil will leave behind. Not just the laughter, the memories, or the countless inside jokes, but the quiet reassurance that being yourself, fully and fearlessly, will always be enough.